today we're going to talk a little bit about entrepreneurship and creativity and why you should care and what that really means for you as a startup and what you could really do to increase your creativity, grow it, and how you can use it to leverage all the problems you face to really get to that next stage in your startup and in your business, especially as you face more and more challenges, everything from selling more products to even getting investors. So let's define what creativity is. Steve Jobs said that creativity is just connecting things. Now, what does that mean, and how do you do that? How can you connect things? Now, that's tough, of course, and the way Steve Jobs said it before and explained it is it really builds on your previous experiences. So if you want to really understand how Steve Jobs was as creative as he was, you have to go back a few years to what he studied, how his life went on from a young age, and really what you can do to transform from kind of black and white thinking into creative thinking. So he really encouraged everybody to experience life in new ways, stuff that you wouldn't think to do, because later on, when you face challenges, when you face problems, you can now think of them and approach them in a new way. So for example, for him, he took a calligraphy class in college for no apparent reason other than the fact that it was interesting. But that shaped his design thinking 10 years later and how he actually formed Apple and what Apple came to be, and really how users interacted with it as smoothly as they did. So what is creativity and why do you care? In my mind, creativity is really all about problem solving and how you can solve problems in a unique and kind of out-of-the-box thinking. Now, what kind of problems do startups face? You face normal business problems. Maybe we'll even talk about an example. Maybe we'll talk about a very boring example. So let's take toothpaste. You are a business trying to sell toothpaste. Now you want to sell more toothpaste. How can you do that? Now you can kind of go into it head first and see, change the packaging, make the package bigger, sell smaller toothpaste, all of these that don't really touch on the core issue. And the core issue is people using the toothpaste and how they can use it. So if you think about it, when you use a toothpaste, you're just kind of pushing on the tube to get the toothpaste out. So what if instead of changing the outside, instead of trying to change the box, if you go into the box and just change the size of the tube, now people are going to push out more toothpaste and just use their toothpaste faster. So this is not a product where you can try and push user habits so that they buy more toothpaste, brush 3 times a day. That's not the kind of habits you can influence, but you can influence how much they push out each time and how fast they run into it. So that's just one example of creative thinking and how it can impact your business. So now let's think about a problem that maybe is a little closer to heart for startups. We're talking about investors. So in my mind, there's 3 ways to get investors. One is, I call it the grapevine. So the grapevine really means, let's show you what that means. There you go. So the grapevine means going to your friends and family, going to everybody you know, everybody your mother knows, and telling them, hey, I'm starting this business, do you want to invest? Are they the right investor? Maybe, maybe not. Are you super precise in finding that right investor? Maybe or may not. Okay, so that's one approach, and if you have that network already that can invest in your startup, then I'm jealous of you, good for you, and now you can focus on growing your business. Now, if you don't have that, the second approach is kind of through perseverance. So that means going to conferences like these, going to angel groups, pitching to every investor you can get in front of. But again, is that really effective? Is that really the best use of your time? And if you approach this problem as creatively as you can. So let's try and think about it creatively. As a startup, you're trying to get to an investor. You're trying to get to the right investor, and ideally you want to get there with a warm introduction. So, in my mind, you should do kind of an action list. So if we're going through a strategy, first you should make a comparable list. Let's see, creatively, what companies are similar to mine? Either in the same domain, but similar technology, different technology, similar business model. That's up to you as the founder to figure out, hey, these companies are comparable to me, and any investor that invested in them would probably be interested in investing in me. Now that's research you can do on Crunchbase, you can do online, just research and strategy you have to think through. Okay, so now we have that list of comparables. Awesome. Now we look at those comparable companies and we look who invested in them. And now we have a really specific target list. And we know these investors invested in those companies. That means that this investor is probably interested in what I'm doing. Now I should try and get to that investor. Now if you cold email them, that's an approach. But if we're trying to be more creative, what is the best way we can get to that investor. Ideally, the warmest introduction you can get is through a company that investors already invested in, and that founder recommends you. So that investor has that trustworthiness with the founder that has already made him or her money, and now you're coming in with a better appearance. So how can you do that? You can go back to that comparable list, and you can make a connection list. So that's all the founders of those companies. Reach out to them, and don't just go kind of head first saying, hey, introduce me. Again, try and think about it creatively and say, hey, I see that you work with that investor. I'm thinking about this investor and I think he might be right for my company. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience? And if you do a good job, ideally that founder will make that introduction for you. And again, that's the warmest introduction you can have. So that's just one example of strategic thinking for actually startups and for a problem that most of you are facing today. And it's probably the reason you're here, trying to get in front of investors. And this way you can be much more strategic and get to exactly the right investor. So now if we're talking about your startup as a whole, let's reference another really well-known name. So let's think about Bill Gates. So again, if you want to think how he's so successful now, you have to take a few steps back to when he was younger and how he came to be where he is. So Bill Gates really pushes the idea of always hiring people who are smarter than you. And that's actually what he said. His secret for success was hiring people smarter than him. And now I want you to think of people's smartness, not necessarily just intelligence, but also creativity. And value that people who come from unique perspectives bring new problem-solving approaches to your startup that can actually help you get where you want to get faster. So again, main takeaways are Steve Jobs and experience new and unique ways of life to add to your perspective, to give you more creativity. And also Bill Gates, which is value people who have different experiences and who are smarter than you at some things, who may be more creative than you than others. And in that way, you can really get where you need to get and get all the creativity you need to really solve all the problems you face as a startup. So now, last little quote by Albert Einstein is, creativity is intelligence having fun. And if you interpret this, it doesn't mean creativity is just intelligence. It means if you want to be creative, you need to do it intelligently. And don't just look at things face value, but also try and dig deeper, understand the thought process behind them, understand the creativity that went into it, and really see how that can shape your own. And last but not least, Einstein said one last thing, which is creativity is contagious, so pass it on. So please pass it on today, and really don't be afraid to experience and try new things, because even if they're not exactly applicable to your startup today, that knowledge and that perspective can help impact future problems that you need to solve and how you solve them. Thank you.